Have you ever seriously contemplated a Christless world? So many of us are born and raised in the church, and we just grow up hearing the story, the gospel story. But what if that was just all a fable? What if death and sin and evil was all there really was? What if there was no incarnation? No Word made flesh? It just never actually happened. What if there were no Gospels? No story to be told of a Christ and His life and death and resurrection and ascension? What if the world that we actually live in had never been invaded by the sovereign redemptive power and purposes of God in Jesus Christ? What if there really was no Christmas and no cross and no Christ? And so there will be no judgment against the devil, no vindication of those who've been wronged, no redemption for the elect, no forgiveness for sinners, no justification, no reconciliation, no resurrection from the dead, no new heaven and new earth. All that there is death and judgment for sinners. That's all. That's it. You see, then all that we really have is abysmal despair. Bertrand Russell, famed British atheist, was asked, he was in his 90s, he was asked on British radio that if after spending his adult life denying the existence of God, he was asked, well, what do you as you're facing death now, what do you hang on to now? What do you have to hang on to now in your last years? And he replied, I have nothing to hang on to but grim, unyielding despair. At least he's honest. D.A. Carson makes the point that most people are less honest. We just ignore the question. We deny the reality of God and just live our lives consuming without ever really facing the ramifications of a Christless world. Let me ask you this morning, what difference would it make in your life if God were actually sovereign? What difference would it make in your attitude if the Son of God really had come to earth because He loved you and He really had given up His life in order to rescue you, and that He really is now seated at the right hand of God, ordaining every single event and detail of your existence to bring you eternal joy? What if that were actually true? Now think about the life you lived this past week. If this were actually true, doesn't that mean we can let the anxiety and the fears go? In truth? Isn't it true, if this is true, isn't it true that someone actually has it? That someone with the power and the authority actually does control the circumstances of your life, and that you don't need to be afraid of anything? If this is actually true, it will feel like, you see, the burden of weight and the responsibility that you carry on your shoulders to keep everything together, to keep the world, right, your world functioning and working, it'll just drop away. It's not what Jesus has called you to do. He's called you to look up and see the one who actually holds it. And to actually trust that He knows what He's about and He loves you. And if it doesn't feel like weight falling off your shoulders, then you haven't experienced it yet. You haven't seen it yet. If this is actually true, won't we laugh more at ourselves? And laugh more at the goodness, the astonishing, overflowing, abounding goodness of God to us? Won't it just make you laugh out loud? That the living God of heaven and earth is so good to you, so kind to you, so patient with you, that He loves you so much and blesses you with so much, not just in this life, but He promises you a new heaven and new earth where you will reign with Him. He's made you a kingdom of praise to His God. Won't we laugh more if that's true? And fear less if it's true? And find that we start weeping for different things, it just breaks our heart to see people made in the image of God, blind to the glory of God, blind to the door that's been opened for them in Jesus Christ. So that changes how we pray and what we pursue. And we worry less about our misfortunes and a lot more about those who don't know Jesus.